f has domain minus infinity to 4 and is defined by f of x equals x squared minus 8x plus 7. First, I want to express f of x in the form f of x equals x plus a squared plus b, where a and b are constants whose values are to be found. So here we're going right back to C2 methods. Essentially, I'm completing the square. So f of x equals, I want to halve the coefficient of x, so I get x minus 4 squared. Remember that when I expand this bracket, I get x squared. I get two lots of minus 4x, which is what gives me the minus 8x, but I also get an additional plus 16. So I then have to subtract the constant squared, or subtract the minus 4 squared. Don't forget to add the plus 7 on at the end. So when I simplify this, f of x is equal to x minus 4 squared. We've got minus 16 plus 7, which is minus 9. Okay, so part B says, hence or otherwise find an expression for the inverse function of x. So this is part A. Let's do part B. So what I want to do is I want to say y is equal to the function of x. So I've got x minus 4 squared minus 9. So this is using the hence because I've now used the answer from part A. So rearranging this to get x as the subject, I'm going to add 9 to both sides. So I get y minus 9 equals x minus 4 squared. At this point, I want to take square root. Now, we're going to need to decide whether this is a negative or a positive square root. So if we have a look at the sketch of this graph, so this is my quadratic, I know that the minimum is at 4, 9. 4 minus 9. So here we go, here's my minimum, 4 minus 9. Now, what's going to happen here is I'm going to have two roots. We can just put this like this for the time being. Y-intercept is going to be somewhere around here, so it's going to be like a 7 here. Now, looking at my domain, I go from minus infinity up to 4, so just going to put the value 4 here. Actually, it comes down to this minimum here. This is going to give me, let's get my highlighter here. This is my domain of f of x. Okay, so it heads off there to minus infinity. Now, what that means is, when I do my range, let's just work through this a little bit further. So I'm going to leave it as plus or minus at the moment, square root of x. Okay, let's get the right colour pen, sorry. So I'm going to leave this as plus or minus, and when we get to a little bit further on, you'll see how we're going to pick this value. So take the square root, we'll just leave it as plus or minus the square root of y minus 9 at the moment, equal to x minus 4. And then if I add 4 to both sides, I get that x is equal to, and I'm just going to write it as 4 plus or minus square root of y minus 9. So my x values, what x values do I want? I want, and these here, these are my x values that I want. So how can I get these x values, which are 4 and less? Well, it means that I have to take the negative square root, because I want to start at 4 and then start subtracting values. So when I state f of inverse function of x, not only do I change this variable y, which used to represent our output, not only do I change that to an x, but I must make sure that I state this as 4 minus the square root of x minus 9. If I do positive the square root, so let's actually, here x values, so this would be 4 minus the square root of x minus 9. Just so you can see, I'll highlight in yellow, so let's put the yellow on here. This part of the graph here, this would be represented by the function if I'd written 4 let's do it in yellow, 4 plus the square root of x minus 9. Okay, well let's have a look and see how the marks are awarded in this question. Initially, standalone mark if you completed the square correctly and got to this expression. Next, you get a method mark if you have stated y equal to this expression and in some way you've tried to make x the subject of this formula. So then we get an accuracy mark if you get to this stage here where you've got 4 plus or minus the square root of y minus 9. And then finally, you get the final accuracy mark if and only if you have correctly chosen the correct sign for which the inverse function is defined. Okay. Well, I hope that all made sense and that my explanations made sense. We're missing one mark there. There's an extra. Let's make sure I'm correct. There is an extra accuracy mark. It seems to be that there's 2 accuracy marks here if you've identified the correct sign. Okay, I hope you've understood that and that the question all makes sense.